Hello, y'all. It's my Luna coming at you with some Omega energy. We're doing a face break today. My face still breaks out like as if I was a teenager. I don't understand it, but it is what it is. Now, today I would like to talk to you about choices. Of course, I have a few little allegorical stories to tell you about that, but in essence, thought experiments as well as the choices we make within those thought experiments can alleviate us from, falling into traps of just doing what we're told when we're told to do it. Now, if you got a day job, sometimes that is necessary. But outside of your day job, the thing you use to keep the lights on and put food in your fridge, everything else is up to you and how you perceive it, how you act on it, how you walk through life. I know sometimes it feels like there is no choices. And in the last 3 years, there's been a lot of that, okay? This conversation, because I love to call these conversations, this conversation is more about you being autonomous in a way, but also realizing that you are a part of a big sum of community and collective. And when collective, we always are talking about people in general. Now, thought experiment, part of what I was talking about last video, as it pertains to the war that's going on currently in Ukraine. Now, is that going to be something that ages well? I don't know, as it pertains to how my opinions on the subject matter is concerned. But it is a thought experiment to see whether or not the listening audience can understand that just because you're told something is real doesn't make it real. You looking into it for yourself before formulating an opinion can be beneficial to not just yourself, but everybody around you. Now, we've been previously told about the different wars in Afghanistan and Iran, that there were weapons of mass destruction in those places, and that's the reason why we needed to go over there. Before that, they were being blamed for the attacks on 9/11. We just listened to our leaders, our political leaders, on those matters, and it didn't come out till later on that something else nefarious was going on there. Nobody's been held accountable for it because the weapons of mass destruction were never found. But a lot of people lost their lives. A lot of people suffered at the hands of our leaders, and we just cheered them on. Now, this is not something to say that I'm against in any way the military. Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, the point I made previously, sometimes you have to do what you need to do in order to keep your lights on, to feed your family, and feed yourself. And that's the role of the military in a lot of ways. Also, there is good intent. They want to help out in any way they can help out. Generally speaking, human beings do want to have balance within themselves and in their lives. And then if they can, contribute to balance in the lives of others if they choose to do that. But most of the time I find that they choose to do that. And if they're told by their leaders, you're going to liberate someone, liberate some people, and there's nothing else going on there other than we are atoning for the attacks on our country and liberating the people there. Well, some of the people in this land, even at the same time they were being told that, and we were being told that, were not liberated. It's become more and more apparent that there were things going on underneath the surface even in this country that were stigmatizing and just as confining as some of the things we were told about other countries that we invaded during those time periods. The thought experiment is to get you to think. Think before you act. Think before you emote. Think before you choose a side. Because part of the evolutionary process that I'm experiencing is to learn not to take one. To be not a standby person or bystander person that never acts in anyone's favor. No, I'm not like that. There are times where I do take sides up here and with my actions, and then I still sit down even if I've decided which side is the least balanced of the two, because good and evil are relative terms, and we've talked about that. Good and evil, what someone thinks is evil, someone can think is just, so on and so forth. even after I've made that determination and maybe even taken some action on it, whether I spoke out about it, wrote about it, or something, I still sit down with myself sometimes, especially when given new information about the circumstances, and decide again whether or not my thought process on that is just. And that's a thought experiment you can do. Yes, I stated that Zelensky and Ukraine, it's problematic for me to view, to experience, seeing him being content, happy, and all these things, jet setting around the world and shaking hands with world leaders while his people on the ground are suffering. Maybe that's part of the political device. And after I spoke on that, I sat down a little while and I said, maybe that's a part of the political device where he has to do that in order to get aid for his people. And if that's the case, then I stand corrected. But until I know that, what I'm seeing and what I am viewing does not track with what news reports are saying about his leadership and the things that he's doing. Okay? Now, I'll reiterate, not that I really care too much about whether or not someone thinks I'm a good or bad person. That ship has sailed. Though there are those who know me and those who don't know me. And some people who do know me still perceive me to be one or the other, right? But how I perceive myself is the most important thing. You can take that little hint. How you perceive yourself is the most important thing. Now, as it pertains to choices in that thought experiment, concept, and idea, with every single thing you're told, whether it be media or just happenstance in a conversation with a neighbor or a friend, in some way it's influencing your decisions, and the speaker has some standing in that, some power in that. If you trust the speaker that is speaking to you, then you're more likely and more inclined to believe what it is they're saying. There's nothing wrong with that per se. It saves you a little bit of legwork, but even those who you trust can, at any point in time, change their demeanor, change their decisions, sit down and have a thought experiment of their own, decide for themselves what's most beneficial to me right now, to say, do, act upon, speak upon. And that thought hit home recently because I was talking about something I was talking about on Facebook, how the experience when I was studying abroad was so starkly different than my experiences here in America. How I didn't experience any crime. How my ethnicity and my gender didn't even bear any concept to me the whole time. In other words, I wasn't constantly on guard, and I also wasn't constantly feeling like I need to act or be a certain way because of my ethnicity. In other words, this delusional idea and concept that humans are different based on the type of melanin or amount of melanin in their skin, that is something that I have experienced in my country, but I didn't experience in Europe. Okay? Not saying that it's not evident there in any way, that I don't live there. I was there for a month and a half, but however, that's a very long time not to experience bigotry and racism. If it were present in that space and something that was as problematic as it has been in this country, I think I would experience it at least once in some kind of way, but I don't go out looking for it. It's just that it didn't dawn on me until I was on the plane back to America that I had not experienced any of that. It had not even occurred to me at all. The most I got was, catcalling, which is common amongst the male of the species, cis male of the species, but the catcalling wasn't even threatening. It was more like Bella and stuff like this, right? So it didn't bother me. It was actually complimentary. Nobody tried to aggressively come towards me or anything like that. Even though some people say Italian men specifically can be that way, I didn't experience that, okay? Same thing in Germany. In Germany, people were so pleasant and so kind that I was like, okay, my history books made me feel like if I come here, it's going to be a problem. And that too is part of what I'm saying. If you just read in doctored history. And our history, especially in this country, has been doctored, and there's attempts to make it even more doctored now. If you just read in doctored history what a whole culture is like, and then you take the media's interpretation of what a whole country is like, and you don't experience it for yourself, your formulated opinion is not an opinion, it's someone else's opinion that you just absorbed and decided was fact. Okay? Having an open mind when experiencing life will give you a more fruitful and more diverse palette in the mind as it pertains to all things and all people. Okay? See, I go to the store and I wear this, for example. And I do this because my hair is very, very wild. I love it, but it's wild. It took me a long time to love the wildness of my hair. I did all kinds of things to tame it. Sometimes I would dye my hair black just so the dyes can tame my hair a little bit, because sometimes those chemicals and those dyes can tame the hair a bit. And I did that for many, many years. But when I walk in a store like this, people don't know what culture, religion I'm coming from, but then they realize that I'm wearing regular, culturally Americanized female gendered clothing. And I'm like, this is a mismatch. What's going on? Why is she wearing that thing on her head? Well, it's to tame my hair, but also it's because sometimes when we have the head cover, and a lot of different people with different cultures and belief wrap their head to protect their head from some of the energies around. And I do it for that purpose as well. So you'll never know unless you talk to me what's the reason why I got this on top of my folks. Now, we even talked about my folks before. And when I say my folks, I'm talking about the connectedness I have to ether and the energies in ether, the things that I can perceive, and many people can perceive too if they tune in and listen to it, but you ain't got to do all that. Sometimes I feel like sometimes I feel like I don't have a choice, because I can just be doing some random, ordinary thing in my day, and then suddenly I perceive something. And I'm like, okay, let me sit here and think about what it is I just perceived. But when I go out, that is a bit more overwhelming. And sometimes having this wrap on my head or having something on my head and keeping my head covered does help with those energies, because I can I experience a notable difference. That's just on some side stuff. Now, when it pertains to the thought experiment and choices, this is how we can figure out. I have friends who have difficulty and challenges in standing up for themselves. And they've had that, and some of them overcome it, but they've had that in a way that is challenging to them emotionally, because once they didn't stand up for themselves, that kind of follows you. And I've had that experience a time or two, okay, where you kind of wish you had said or did a thing in a certain time, or they feel so overwhelmed with their everyday life that they don't want to put themselves out there like that. And so the challenge doesn't have to be that you put yourself out into a terrible spot. The challenge could be that I decide how much of that I'm going to do. See, personally, story time. Personally, I put myself out there so many times that my fellow family says, all you do is fight. You fight all the time. I'm like, well, it's like I'm a hammer to a nail. I don't always like that. And the experience of that has not always been friendly or fun. And this particular story is on the lines of that. And I've touched on it before about how it was my goal to eventually create a space or something for myself, my family, and my community, so that there's easier access to mental health care, wellness, spiritual guidance if someone wants that. And that's practically what I do every day. Okay? But I wanted to do that from a framework of authority in my diplomas and doctorates and things of this nature. And in essence, I told the story before about there was one specific instructor that I just called BS on immediately upon sitting in this class. I'm like, no, real recognizes real, but real also recognizes fake. But I sat there for a while and experienced them first before I opened my mouth. See, that's the thing. You experience something, you take your information that you experience and then back that up with facts. And so I backed it up with facts, and I was just like, oh, okay. So you are an illegitimate teacher. So why am I paying you thousands of dollars to teach me? Now, I'm not saying you're terrible at what you're doing, but I'm saying that if I'm paying for the authority to be in this room, there should be an authority to be in this room. And when I say authority, I mean someone who's actually earned their degrees, okay, and continuously do so. Now, I'm not saying this person was completely illegitimate, but not legitimate in the sense of we were all earning the same thing that he claimed to have, and he's supposed to be teaching us how to get there. And so I took exception to that in so many ways. But here's the thing that I was talking about with my friends. I used to feel some type of way about it, but I don't necessarily blame them at this point because it's not an easy road. When I took exception, okay? Questioned almost everything he had to say because I wanted to know what it is he's talking about is something that is sound. Now, that didn't win me a whole bunch of friends and influence on people at that particular time. Some people were just genuinely entertained by the fact that I questioned almost everything, but not just in that class, but in many other classes, but specifically that class, mostly because I'm like, if I am not allowed to question in this space, then where am I allowed to question things? And some of the things I was hearing didn't even make sense. Some of the, even in general, not just in that class, but generally speaking in counseling, in the counseling field, there's a lot of tenets and things that I know would only work for people who are culturally Caucasian, Anglo-Saxon, whatever you want to label that culture as, that would not work for any other demographic, even though we're supposed to be multicultural and person-centered based on the education we were getting at that time. And I'm like, nah, this is not going to work for them. I already know. Based on experience, based on understanding myself, I know that's not going to work. So why is it being taught from that framework? Well, it is known within many levels of science and arts that a lot of our educational materials and lectures and stuff like that is based upon cis white male identity, and how they would treat them. And that is not cross-cultural. And it was not enough people in my assessment at that time that were questioning that. Though I had a whole lot of other things going on, but at that particular time, I was really crossed about that. It wasn't disrespectful at that particular point. It got disrespectful later on, but that's just neither here nor there. But choices. As I was doing that, nobody else was doing it. They were getting their grades and they were skipping through. Then I come to understand that the cis white males had an automatic ticket to get their doctorate. The rest of us had to work for it. Once I understood that trend in that particular place, I was even more incensed by that. And then I was like, well, what do I do at this time? So I tried to put myself in a role of leadership. There's a president, vice president, there's elections, so that no different than class president at a high school, but they have that within colleges. So I'm like, if I put myself in a leadership role, then I can figure out a way to change this and advocate for myself as well as other women, especially women of color. Well, they made sure that didn't happen. Now I found out later they made sure that didn't happen. I actually won the election and they took my votes. That incensed me even more. It just tacked on to more and more feelings I had about that. And then after that, I became a target. And see, this is why your choices do matter. If you can't handle the smoke, don't go into the kitchen kind of thing. And so even though there were times where it was challenging to handle that smoke, I still took the smoke. But I took it by myself and made me even more incensed. Again, if you're going to have an opinion about anything, if you're going to formulate an opinion, may it be an educated opinion and one born out of experience and education, both those things together can benefit you long term. If you're not sure, and the only way you can be sure is by doing both those things, experiencing and getting concrete data and information. And that is the biggest crux of it. The end result of my choices, after all of that, the end result of those choices, so I was disallowed from even making an attempt at receiving my doctorate. There was a certain point in time, I just told you about me studying abroad. I went and studied abroad. They knew I was studying abroad. Same school sponsored it, came back and told me I dropped a letter grade from a class that I was attending because I went and studied abroad. It was like anything they can do to make it justifiable to do what they did to me, they did it. And I had a friend that was like my best friend at the time. She went along with whatever they said or what they wanted. And I get it. At the time, I didn't get it. At the time, I was incredibly angry and frustrated. Like, you see what they're doing to us. And this is not the first time I've had this experience, so I'll tell you. I've had multiple colleagues or friends tell me, well, the only way we can change the system is from within the system. I was like, you know what? There's a lot of people who think they can do that. And that's never how the system changes from within. That's never been borne out in history or anything like that. It's always someone outside of the system that changes the system. And if you actually want to change the system, you need to stop benefiting from it. At a certain point in time, when I was building what I have now, I told this best friend, like, look, you can't keep taking stuff from them while working with me. You're going to have to let that go. And she couldn't. It broke my heart. Again, can't control other people. It's something I'm learning. Not learning, but I've learned from a lot of those experiences. See, even the things that make us uncomfortable is always our teachers. What I learned from that is trying to contain and control someone else's identity or concern for the bigger picture is not something that's going to benefit me or them. They have to make their own choices. Even though it doesn't matter that I may feel some type of way about it. Okay? And that essence is almost like she was used, and that's the way I felt at the time. And I still kind of feel that way. She was used as an additional weapon against me. It's like, well, we're going to give it to her, even though she earned it. We're going to make sure she gets it, and we're going to make sure she knows it, and you know at the same time to make y'all butt heads. And guess what? I felt like if anything was evil or demonic in that sense, I'm like, oh, goodness gracious. Like, they're going to force separation between us. And I saw it coming, and I wonder, that's one of those things where it's like, I don't always prescribe myself anymore to divination in the sense of prophetic understanding. Because even in this is a digression, you know, I like to do it. Even in that situation, I told her, I was like, there's going to be several things that happen that's going to separate us as friends. And she said that is not possible. It is impossible. And I was like, okay, this is the time in which one of those times I pulled out my cards to confirm what it is I was feeling. And then I showed her, I'm like, nah, at this particular time frame is when it's going to go down. And I can't see all the particulars or understand all the particulars right now, but I'm going to tell you this is what's going to happen. And try as I might, it's another reason why be real discerning. I caution you to be real discerning when listening to astrologers and tarot readers, because not all of them who perform those things have ill intent. However, you cannot change. It's been my experience, and you can experience something different. Based on what is said to you, you cannot change your karmic path. No matter what you do. And trust me, I fought hard. To me, it was like a fight for her soul. Because I'm like, if you take what these people are giving to you after everything they've done to me and others that look like us, then you are co-signing and saying, I agree with what you're doing. I agree with what they're doing. And I love you enough to fight for your soul, even if you ain't going to fight for it. And let me tell you something. That was never again. Someone wants their soul to be fought with, and they'll ask me for assistance, and I'll help them. Outside of that, no. That's an even overarching lesson I learned from that experience. But my choice at that particular time was to say, this is not cool. When I tell you I went off with a T, I went off. Because I saw all of it. I saw all the dirty tricks and all the nastiness and all the stuff behind the scenes to keep things, the operation running smoothly. We want this amount of women of color so we can say we have them, but we really want cis white males in our program, but we're not going to tell everybody else that. And that part right there was really, really the part that just like stung me. Because I'm like, I worked my butt off. I didn't tell nobody that I had already been diagnosed with the neurological issues I had in my brain. And I talked about that in previous videos. And that it's a good chance that I, at that time, The doctor told me it was a good chance that this was going to be one of my last things that I accomplished in my life, and I wanted to accomplish it, not just for myself, but my kids and my community, and put in place something that maybe she or others can take over and work so that we can create something that is a sacred and safe space for everybody in our community, even if we do it small. That was the plan. We make plan and God laughs, like the old saying says. Anyway, but at the end of the day, I eventually obtained legal counsel. And it wasn't even about that, it was about something separate, but that was included into it too a little bit. And they got wind of it, and it was like, oh, now we want to offer you the opportunity to get your doctorate. Offer me, I earned it a long time ago. Not only did I earn it, there was a lot of women and women of color who earned it a long time ago, but y'all prefer a certain type of person in your program while using the rest as tokens. Now, if you can go back, if those people are still interested, and show me that you offered it to everybody who earned it up until this point, and give them the same opportunity you're giving me, because now I have obtained a legal counsel, then and only then will I accept this offer. And I also, put some choice words in there, like, y'all got some damn nerve to come to me after I've gotten a lawyer to say this to me. Because it wasn't even about the money, it was about the principle. So I turned it down. My lawyer did not. My lawyer was not amused. And that's the choice. I got more information even after I graduated about that program and the corruption and the things they did to manipulate and keep things the way that they felt comfortable. And all these good people, as I've talked about it before, all these good people around them. And they were good people. I met a lot of good people. A lot of my instructors were good people. And some of them weren't. Some of them were just a part of a cog in the system. But some of them were really genuinely good people. Watched all this go on and was like, well, at least it's not me. That's the way I felt about it. Now, it couldn't have been, there could be other layers there. Again, everybody got to turn on their lights and put food in the fridge. At the time, I wasn't thinking about that. A lot of times I made decisions that were very determinant in my life. I wasn't considering or concerned about how I was going to eat. I always just thought, I'm always going to have. If I stick true to myself and my principles, I'm always going to have. And that's born true. So I just go what has been true for me. Now, everybody might not have that kind of faith. And at the time, I wasn't trying to hit it. I was just ready to go off on everybody, and I did. I did. Now, are there things that I would do differently now? Absolutely, there were things I would do differently now. But one of them things I wouldn't do differently is turn down that offer. I would definitely still turn it down today. If it was given to me in honest consciousness, and at the very least, if they couldn't afford the prospect of offering to everybody who was denied that deserved it and earned it, at least admit what they were doing. At least admit what was done, not just to me, but others. That would be a caveat for me. Principle. I gotta live with myself, and not everybody need to have that in order to move to what they feel is the next station. But in that story, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things that I did in misjudgment, but also there's a lot of things I did on principle. There's choices I made that placed me right where I am. So I didn't get the opportunity to get that doctorate at that particular time, but what I did receive for myself was a sense of being that I can come on here and tell you and my children anytime they want to come see it, that it's okay to stand on principle. You might lose some things, but those things are temporary things. You are forever. Your soul is forever. And I'm of the belief, and you don't have to believe this. That's why this is a conversation. Get you to think and then choose your own path. I'm of the belief you sell pieces of yourself every time you compromise your intuition and your morals and your principles. People talk about spiritually how you sell your soul, and that's the only way I've come to understand you do that, because a piece of yourself gets broken every single time you compromise yourself. Yeah, those out there who work jobs that they can't stand to keep the lights on. Are you compromising your principles? Not necessarily. The job you're working that you can't stand, if it turns on the lights for yourself or people you love and puts food in the fridge, part of you is putting up with that as an act of love. But if you need a raise, or a position, and you know someone else was disenfranchised so that you can have that position, that's the point in which you're compromising your principles and your morals. But if you don't care about that, then you don't care about that. You just got the position. You went out up above everybody else. If you perceive it that way, that is your reality, and it's just as valid as mine. That's one of those things I've learned along the way too. Someone else's reality is just as valid as mine. I don't mean I have to participate in it. And that was my choice. I don't want to participate in this. There's a lot of things wrong with it. And I think that's how we evolve and change as a species, is that there are some of us who make the harder decisions so that the rest can benefit. And I told the story last time at that foundation dinner that I did. I knew going into making a speech that I wasn't going to benefit, even though it was told to me at the time I was going to benefit. And here I am speaking on behalf of other people so that they can get scholarships to go to college. And I still had to work my ass off through mine. And I still got a bill outstanding to this day. I made millions for someone else. And at the time, I didn't think about it. It wasn't a thought. But there are times where it still kind of like stabs me in the side like, girl, how much have you done? And how much have you given? And how much do you have for yourself? And I'm like, well, that's the only time where I agree with the statement, it is what it is. I had a friend who's like a sister to me. She said, it is what it is all the time. I'm just like, no, it don't have to be what it is. We don't have to accept things that make us uncomfortable if we can do something about them. And that was always my argument. But as it pertains to that, things that are past are what they are. You can't go back there and change them. Things that are present and future. Now, we got some choices in that. So anytime you're going to hear me say that it is what it is, it's something that's already happened. Because those are facts. Can't go back and do nothing about those. But presently speaking, I can't think for myself. I can't teach you to do that too and have these little thought experiments and really, really research how you feel about something before you engage in it further. Sit down with it for a while. No matter what's being told to you, sit down with it for a while and have a thought experiment of your own and figure out if you can discern for yourself what's fact, what's fiction, and what makes sense and what doesn't. Anyway, yeah, love. I think I'm going to do a few videos today, but I don't know. Most time I feel, because I don't have no clients today. So anyway.